So I wanted to first thank Peter Easton and the conference organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity to showcase my research in front of a great crowd at a great conference. My name is Yoon at Northwestern, and I wanted to talk to you today about ESG and shareholder value. So first, I wanted to briefly introduce ESG as a space and my take on it, and talk to you about two of my research papers. In the in the past 15 years, ESG has really taken off. This is a graphical illustration of UNPRI signatories. This initiative started 15 years ago with roughly a few $100 billion of signatory AUM. By 2020, the number reached $120 trillion globally. To give you some context about how much $120 trillion is, it is roughly 3 times the entire US market cap. So, there's this area has really taken off. So a classic question of interest for both academics and practitioners is that whether ESG should be related to shareholder value. My view on this is that if there's a buy-in that ESG is an investment activity of the firm, then yes, ESG should be related to shareholder value. But the issue is on how to uncover that link and to understand that we have to understand what the issues that are associated with uncovering the cross-sectional characteristics that shape the relationship between ESG and shareholder value. So, for example, there are some barriers. First, ESG information is non-financial in nature in most cases, so it is very difficult to embed ESG information into traditional evaluation frameworks such as DCF model or multiples model that analysts use. Also, there are issues in quantifying, defining, and measuring ESG, which leads to issues in firms communicating ESG and also potential concerns of greenwashing. So with this in mind, please let me introduce my research agenda that has been on uncovering the link between firm ESG investments and shareholder value. So the first paper that I wanted to quickly discuss is titled Corporate Sustainability, First Evidence on Materiality, co-authored with Mo Khan and George Serafim. In essence, what this paper is about is that sector-level materiality matters in identifying the link between ESG and shareholder value. So what we do in this paper is that we introduce SASB, so Sustainability Accounting Standards Board's sector-level materiality classification, and classify traditional ESG scores into two groups. So prior to this paper, the literature has created long-short portfolios based on ESG signals, such as MSCI KLD, and created long-short portfolios using that signal and couldn't find any alpha associated with it. So the conclusion that was made was that ESG was not related to value. The innovation of this paper is to separate an existing ESG score commonly used by institutional investors and academics, parsing it into two parts: one score that is related to sector level materiality, one that is not. To give you an intuition, if you look at the non-renewables sector, the darker you get, the more material an issue is for the particular sector, as guided by SASB. For example, SASB is guiding that for the non-renewable resources sector, the issues that are related to environment, so those related to GHG emissions and air quality, are more material than issues that are related to customer welfare and access and affordability. So when we use the ESG signal that is identified as material by the SASB guidance, and create a long-short portfolio, we find a very significant difference between the long and the short portfolio. When we use the signal that is immaterial and create a long-short portfolio, we actually do not find much difference in the two. We also tried double sorting the signal and created 4 portfolios. Smart are the portfolio of firms that are high on material ESG issues, low on immaterial. Dumb are low on material, high on immaterial. All and none are high on both material and immaterial, or low on both material and immaterial. And we find that during the course of 20 some years and rebalancing the portfolio every year, there's a very significant difference in portfolio return between smart and the rest. And we view that this is an evidence pointing out the importance of financial materiality in identifying the link between ESG and shareholder value. My second paper is titled, Do High Ability Managers Choose ESG Projects That Create Shareholder Value? Evidence from Employee Opinions with Kyle Welch. The essence of this paper is that high ability managers choose ESG projects that create shareholder value, and the intuition is actually very simple. These days, every single firm managers are pressed by institutional investors to engage in ESG investments and participate in ESG practices. And under this constraint optimization problem that managers are facing, we essentially are finding that managers that are high ability choose projects that can enhance shareholder value because their compensation is tied to shareholder value. So how do we identify high ability managers? We use the Glassdoor data. Specifically, we use roughly 1 million employee survey data for S&P 1500 companies from 2011 to 2018. And we use employee ratings on senior management as a signal. So one potential issue with this approach is that you would expect an employee-related score to be a part of an ESG score, right? We also expected the same, but actually found that this was not the case. We found that MSCI ESG rating, which is the most commonly used ESG score that proxies for ESG investments, actually has very little correlation to employee ratings from Glassdoor. This finding is robust to considering MSCI's S score, or even those scores within MSCI that are on employees. We view that this reflects a very interesting institutional feature in this space. First, ESG rating, or even S rating, contains multiple factors in them, and they are built by human analysts that uses firm voluntary disclosure. So naturally, these scores are quite subjective. Also, employee ratings may be bringing a fresh new dimension on firms' S or social related performance that has not been previously considered. So we wanted to note here that we are using 2 very distinct signals to create our portfolios. The following are our main results. First, we have ESG performance on our y-axis and senior manager ability on our x-axis and conduct a double sort. And we're providing our stock returns and annualized alpha here in a 2x2. Here, we find that our long portfolio of firms that invest a lot in ESG and that has high ability senior managers, which is our purple quadrant, outperform those firms that have low ESG investments and low senior manager ability, for example. In addition, our long portfolio outperforms the group of firms with high ESG investments, but with low managerial ability, and those firms with low ESG investments and high managerial ability. We also put this in a graphical form to show you some the same results. With both high investments in ESG and managerial ability outperforming those that are not, or those that are low on both dimensions. When you start with $1 in 2012 and rebalance the portfolio every year and hold it until 2019, we actually see a stark difference in portfolio performance. So overall, my research agenda so far has been to study the link between ESG and shareholder value. And in the aforementioned papers, I, along with my co-authors, documented that ESG actually can create shareholder value when firms invest in sector-relevant ESG issues and when there are high-ability leaders. I believe that there is tremendous amount of opportunity for accounting academics who whose expertise are in quantifying and measuring or determining how to account for things such as ESG that currently faces a bunch of issues that we talked about briefly. Thank you very much for your time and for this opportunity.